Today, I have as my guest on the podcast a practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine. She is going to explain all about what this is. And I've known her for some time, and she is a huge supporter of health coaches. So let me tell you about Dr. Shivani Gupta. She is an Ayurvedic practitioner and turmeric researcher who helps women reduce inflammation, balance hormones, and boost energy with elemental design, mental inflammation tools, and gut forward routines. Her new book, The Inflammation Code, will be published by Hay House in February of 2026, and it offers a clear, non-diet plan for cooling chronic inflammation. She hosts the Fusionary Health podcast and created the Emmy-nominated TV show Vibrant Health with Dr. Shivani Gupta. You can find more at her website, shivanigupta.com. I know you are going to really enjoy this conversation with Dr. Gupta. Dr. Shivani Gupta, thank you for being with us today, and welcome to Health Coach Talk.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I am so excited for this conversation because I cannot wait to hear all about your new book, The Inflammation Code. What inspired you to write it? What's it about? Let's just dig in. And what is, again, the inflammation code? What are you going to advocate in this book?
You know, I grew up living in two worlds. I grew up in Houston, Texas, my parents trying to build the American dream for us and working really hard for that. And I grew up going to India every year of my life in the summer and spending time with my grandparents and cousins. And I had this weird experience where in the US, we'd go to the pediatrician, they'd write a script for antibiotics, and you'd get better. Or I'd go to India, and my grandma would open the spice cabinet and say, I have a remedy for that. And she'd fix my stomach, she'd fix whatever the issue was. And I kept thinking, these are two really different worlds and two really different approaches. But who is right? And so fast forward over my lifetime, I was chronically sick. I later realized it was leaky gut, and that's why I always felt like this autoimmune patient. And finally, in my 20s, I realized, you know what? There has to be a better way to approach my health. And I told my parents, we are in India. This is the land of yoga and Ayurveda. I bet it has something that'll fix me. And I discovered there's so much wisdom inside of this ancient wisdom called Ayurveda, but it's just kind of buried deep in India. And no one was sharing it in a way that any of us here in the West would be able to use it. So I healed myself, I studied, I immersed, I was really excited about it. And then I have actually spent the last 20 years of my life since then trying to decode how to take the Ayurvedic wisdom and apply it into our daily lives in simple ways, into little bite-sized ways that show us that we can build a circadian rhythm, we can honor gut health, we can bring these key pillars of ancient wisdom, and we can fuse them with modern science. So I'm a huge fan of functional medicine. I wrote a whole chapter on how Ayurveda's approach to gut health and functional medicine's approach to gut health are completely synergistic and aligned, because I wanted to expose people to functional medicine is potent and powerful. Health coaching is necessary. And all these integrative medicine modalities have so much wisdom to them. And it's really about figuring out what works for our individual constitution, because we are so bio-individual.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I really like your approach, and that is it's not either or. It's not ancient traditions all good, Western medicine all bad, but really looking at the best of both worlds and how you can integrate them. And there's a time for one and a time for the other. And it has for blending the two.
Exactly. And I love both. And I love bringing both together. And I wish we had that balanced viewpoint of one way is beautiful, the other way is beautiful, and both together is a really powerful toolkit. It's a double toolkit for us.
Yeah, exactly. And I say the same thing about health coaching. And thanks for including health coaches in your description. So if you think you're having a heart attack, you don't get to a health coach, you get to the emergency room. You get the best of Western medicine. And I was reading, I got a newsletter from our big hospital conglomerate and talking about the wonders of Western medicine. And they gave this example of someone who had this really rare cardiac tumor and life-saving. And they interviewed the surgeon who saved his life. And so there's many situations like that. But unfortunately, it's chronic disease driven by inflammation that is the problem for so many of us. So can you talk about the ancient Ayurvedic tradition and how does that support us if we want to reduce inflammation? First of all, what is inflammation, and what are some ways that we can use this tradition to lower inflammation?
For sure. So we know in the health and wellness and the longevity and the biohacking space right now that inflammation is a problem. And most people know that it's a problem, but they don't recognize how hidden and how insidious it is. And so in the book, I talk about how it's almost like this forest fire that starts in the attic with one little match that's left smoldering after the holidays. And it just starts to slowly spread. And it takes a while before you recognize, you know what? There's something really bad happening here. All the fire alarms are going off. Only then do we hear it loud enough to go and take action. And that's the issue, is this inflammation that brews in us over decades until finally we're like, oh, this is a problem. And whenever I hang out with my friends and meet people, they say, I think this is aging, this joint pain, can't eat anything half the time, it throws me off, fatigue, I get headaches every day, I have this weight gain, I can't lose any weight. These are all struggles I have, but I guess this is just aging. I guess this is how it is. And I always use that word inflammaging and highlight, you know what? It's inflammation that's causing you to feel these aging symptoms. You don't have to feel that way. You could choose differently. But I think in modern day society, we believe that this life that we're in is normal, but it's really a life that's normalized. And we believe that we have to live this way. And so whenever I travel abroad, whenever I live in Italy, which I lived in college and I love going back there, whenever I go to India, I'm like, oh, there actually could be very different rhythms and lifestyles that we live by. And so ancient Ayurveda is this system of health, healing, and medicine from India. It's over 5,000 years old. And when you look at those ancient texts, it really highlights not just how to address every single disease out there and the subspecialties of medicine. It gets pretty serious, but it also outlines this lifestyle. And that lifestyle piece is what I love sharing and teaching because it's preventive. And so it really is beautifully tied actually into so much of what we're teaching in the functional medicine and health coaching and biohacking spaces, which is honor your circadian rhythm. Your circadian clock, your alignment to nature is the key to everything. Ayurveda taught that the gut is the center of all health, and we call that Agni, or your gut digestive fire. And isn't it beautiful that in modern day science, we're talking about the gut-brain axis, we're talking about how gut affects our mental health. We're understanding the gut microbiome is the key to our immune health, our energy, and everything else. And Ayurveda already had a lot of tools in the toolkit for opening up that digestive fire, honoring it throughout the day, strengthening it so we absorb all the nutrition that we want to have. Then another key pillar I teach about is self-care, because we can build self-care rhythms into our day that are detoxing, that help us detox through all the toxin burden that accumulates in the system. And I actually wrote a whole chapter on toxic burdens because we underestimate, when we think of inflammation, a lot of times we think of it as food. Like, oh gosh, I know that wine or that sugar, those foods are the culprit. Yeah, food is a piece of it. But another big piece of it is everything in our lives, in modern day life, that's kind of foreign, coming at the body. And the body's like, that's BPAs, phthalates, mycotoxins. I don't know what to do with that thing. So that thing that's coming at me, I'm going to try to survive. I'm going to mount an inflammatory response against it. And that's why we see this insane prevalence right now of autoimmune disease, chronic disease, inflammation-based disease. So that's 3 of the pillars that I teach about. 4th one I love diving into is food, but Ayurveda talks a lot more about how to eat and when we eat, as opposed to what we eat, because I know what we eat is a pretty controversial topic. Everyone's on all sorts of spectrums with food right now. But I talk a lot more about when you eat, how are you choosing to eat that food? Where are you sourcing it from? What's in that food that's going to benefit you? And then finally, my last two pillars I love to teach are mental inflammation. That's a term that came to me when I was writing this book. I thought, how am I going to explain to people that if we're going to stress about our health, even though we're doing so much good, we're almost chasing our tail because we're eating well, we're eating clean, exercising, all those things, sleeping and focusing on sleep metrics. But it's almost like a pressure we're creating onto the joy of being healthy. And so what is that mental inflammation doing? It's causing physical inflammation. And then finally, I talk about super spices and how super spices like turmeric, which is one of my favorites, are a very powerful toolkit on this journey. And I called this whole process, the 6 pillars, elemental design, because in Ayurveda, we want you to know what your key elements are that make up you, that drive who you are. So I took the doshas and that concept from Ayurveda, and I renamed it elemental design to make it more approachable and usable by all of us.
Wow, I love that. First of all, I love that explanation of inflammation and that little spark. You didn't quite get out the entire fire, and it's smoldering and it spreads and it grows. And and most people don't realize that and don't realize they can have control. So can you explain, I think many people often get confused, or that when they think of Ayurvedic, they only think of dosha. So can you explain what that is and how this elemental design fits in?
For sure. So in Ayurveda, we teach that we're all made up of the 5 elements. And when you're born, those 5 elements combine to give you your own individual constitution. And knowing your constitution really matters because it's kind of like a guidebook to yourself. And it shows you what your templates are. It's kind of like taking a personality quiz where you start to understand, oh, I am of this nature or I am of that nature. And so the first constitution that we teach out of Ayurveda is called Vata, or in the West, we pronounce it Vata. And so this is a person who's kind of thin and wiry, maybe taller or shorter than most of their demographic. This is someone who talks fast, moves fast. Their main elements are wind and ether being space. And so think of a beautiful breeze in a forest during the day. That's a happy version of Vata energy. And a more extreme version could be a tornado because wind and breezes could move at that rate and volatility as well. And so the same Vata person in balance is like happy, joyful, always in motion, creative, energetic. They're that busybody who always has cool stuff going on. When they're out of balance, this is someone who suffers with dryness, constipation, insomnia. They suffer with anxiety as well. And so our job in Ayurveda is to show the Vata person how to stay balanced, how to stay whole and grounded and nourished. A tendency of a Vata person is to run their whole day and they just survive on drinks like their tea or their protein shakes, green juice, and they won't eat. And so a big piece of homework for Vata is 3 nourishing meals a day with your healthy fat. And that sounds easy for most of us, but for a Vata person, that is real homework that you're giving them. And then we go deeper from there to address those dryness issues and things like that. Then you have a Pitta archetype. The Pitta person, we pronounce it Pitta here in the West, that elemental design is someone who's medium-bodied, reddish hair, reddish skin, maybe early graying. This is someone whose traits are all fire with some water. So that fire element really drives. They're sharp. Their personality is very driven, organized, very focused, very clear in their communication. This is someone who is a go-getter. They are driven. They want to create things in the world. When they are out of balance, they're kind of like a volcano. So they tend to erupt. This is the person who gets hangry, angry, frustrated, melts down, burnt out, all the words that describe a fire or a volcano. And so our job is to really help the Pitta person understand you get hangry, you need to eat your 3 meals a day, how to time those meals, how to stay hydrated, how to use summer foods as cooling foods and kind of manage themselves like a nuclear reactor. And so understanding that can be very helpful because Pitta people tend to eat hot, oily, fried foods, spicy foods, and they tend to run inflamed. They're all fire. And so our job is to really support them so they don't end up with, high cholesterol, heart disease, all these types of issues that can be the byproducts. And then finally, you have a template called Kapha. Kapha, or Kapha here in the West, is earth with water. So this is someone who is strong. They have a sturdier body, sturdier frame. They can lift heavier, bigger boned. This is someone who in a man feels kind of like a mountain grounded energy. In a woman, it feels like that grandma, caretaker, loving Mother Earth energy. So personality wise, they're very one thing at a time. They are slower speaking, slower moving, but it's very much the turtle who wins the race. So it's that energy of that person who's going to love and serve everyone around them. They're deeply loyal. When out of balance, that earth energy and that water energy can lead to congestion, sluggishness of metabolism. They tend to run like with colds and heaviness in the chest. They can have a tendency towards getting jealous because they do so much for others and then they feel like they are getting nothing. And so they tend to get jealous. They're very protective of the people around them. And so with Guffa, our job is to move their energy first thing in the morning, because a Guffa person, once they sit down in the evening, they're done for the day. You cannot get them to move again. And so it's just that understanding of all our templates are not meant to be burning the midnight oil and hustling with three different careers. We don't all have to do things just because society is telling us that. We should actually honor our nature, balance within our nature, and then that's how we leverage our nature to thrive in the timeframes that are best for us. And so you're born with your constitution. Over your lifetime, you can definitely shift and get out of balance and live in kind of another constitution. And then some people are three doshic. They're balanced in all three constitutions. And most of us have a primary and a secondary. So for example, I'm a Pitta first, but my Vata mind can tend to get really all over and scattered because of social media and all these things. And so my job is to constantly say, okay, you know what? We have to cut you off from technology and really get grounded and centered and aligned again.
Yeah, such a good explanation. And I can see my primary is absolutely Vata. I am thin, short, and also just energy and light and full of energy. And yeah, the drinks is what I need. And as opposed to 3 meals and have to pay attention to that. And it was really, my older daughter is just like me. And many years ago, we had just moved and we were on an expedition to Target to get some stuff for the house. So my younger daughter, who is totally she's a combination, I think, of a Pitta and the Kapha, and she had a list. Okay, we need all the practical things that we need, and this is it. And my older daughter, and he's like, well, oh, that's a cute pillow, and oh, this is a cute, and just kind of floating around in lightness, and like, oh, look at that. And my younger daughter said, no, we have to stay focused. We have this list. We need we need a fire extinguisher. We need all these practical things. And
it's so funny, right? Yeah. And it's great because once you have the awareness, I mean, speaking into health coaching, then you understand the client in front of you better. You understand their nature. You understand how to kind of align to how they're going to listen to you and implement what you're saying. I use that a lot as a practitioner. I quickly ascertain the constitution of who I'm dealing with and how I'm going to coach, how I'm going to find leverage points with them, how I'm going to help them succeed on their health journey, because a lot of times we are all watching these wellness trends and I know for myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a sauna and a cold plunge and a this and a that. And then I laugh because I'm like, you can't do that. That's all. You have to be careful for what's in your constitution and what you will actually do. Because if it goes directly against your constitution and your nature, you're not going to be able to make yourself do it.
That's exactly right. And that's how I am with cold plunges.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
Saunas are my thing, not cold plunges. And I think also knowing the seasons is very, and it's been cold here in Chicago, and I typically have a morning smoothie, but like with a thought of putting all that ice in, and I don't use a lot of ice. Now, once I had learned, when I'm in a restaurant, no ice in the water. But the idea of like, no, I just cannot have a smoothie. It's first snow, it's cold, and I want some warming foods. And I had this craving for oatmeal. Like, I don't eat oatmeal, but I just wanted something like hot and soothing like that. So.
Yeah. And Ayurveda came up with the circadian clock. That concept came from Ayurveda. And so nowadays I find it beautiful that we're talking about it so much in all the longevity and health spaces. I'm like, oh my gosh, this awareness is what we need right now in this moment. Because when you understand your constitution and how it ties to a season, then you can shift your entire year. So for example, I'm a Pitta first. Pitta season is in the summer. So that summer season, that quarter of the year is the hottest. It's when the sun is highest, the sun is hottest, and the season is the hottest. And so in the summer, I have to lay low. I have to downshift my schedule a bit so that I'm as productive and healthy and happy as I can be the other 9 months. And so Ayurveda taught us we're all meant to take an off season, and it ties to your constitution. So a Vata person like yourself, fall season comes, all of a sudden it's windy and those dry leaves are falling. And if you go too hard in the fall season, that's a season that can tend towards burnout for you. And then winter for Kapha. Kaphas are meant to hibernate. We're not meant to like party through the holidays and then party for New Year's. It's actually more about hibernation and reclusiveness and just doing your own inner work and taking that time to rest. But how many of us do that? Most of us don't. And so understanding those elements and how they tie to us can support us to help us thrive more and to feel more balanced and to feel more healthy. And Ayurveda actually takes that circadian clock and goes even a layer deeper. There's the seasons of the year. There's also times of day. And so, for example, 12 to 2 on the circadian clock, according to Ayurveda, when that sun is highest in the sky, we call that the Pitta time of day. And so during lunchtime, 12 to 2, it's actually 10 to 2. 10 to 2, you're meant to eat your biggest meal of the day to absorb the nutrition. And like you mentioned, ice water. We never have ice water or water even anywhere close to our meals because we want to support the digestive fire to do its job, to ignite, be ready, assimilate and absorb all that nutrition. And so lunchtime is when, if I have microgreens around, I have hemp seeds, I have, sprouts, different things, I will add those in, nuts and seeds, anything harder to digest, I'll add it in at lunchtime. And then 12 to 2 on that clock again at night, 10 to 2, is our most important time to sleep. And so the circadian clock teaches if you sleep from 10 to 2, that's when we're going to clear the glymphatic system. We're going to clear the lymphatic system. We're going to heal, regenerate. And so it's beautiful. This ancient wisdom said, rise with the sun, set with the sun, mimic nature. And that is the key to vitality and health. And so we even teach that Kapha time of day is 6 to 10. And so taking that time to really rest and wind down is important. 2 to 6 is Vata time of day. So that's why after lunch, sometimes we have a really hard time focusing. And so we're meant to, from 2 to 6, just get emails done, light tasks, things like that, because we're not going to have the same focused energy that we did in the morning. And so having that understanding can kind of help you shift your day and understand, okay, well, 2 to 6, if I'm going to feel that way, let me leave all those tasks for that time frame. Let me make sure I have a healthy snack. For me, I teach something called tea time is me time. And so I pause and have alarms that say, have your high tea and snack. It's 3:30. This is the time frame for that. And it's a reminder to just pause and take care of ourselves. Because a lot of times we're going so far, so fast in life. We're so distracted. We're lacking that presence. And so little self-care anchors like tea time is me time is my way to really anchor in and then shift and downshift and kind of upshift into those different time slots of the day.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And I think many people know that intuitively, but sometimes our social life doesn't revolve around that schedule. So dinner people I noticed that there's a trend towards earlier eating in restaurant reservations are being made for Gen Z. I've heard this out. It's like the early bird senior special which is great to eat that way. But oh yeah, I mean, when I'm at an event and it's a late dinner, I just can't eat them.
Me neither.
Yeah. So where can people find you? Where can they find the book? Because I know our audience will be really excited to learn more and get the book.
For sure. So the book is available at theinflammationcode.com, and all the information on the book is there. My website is my name, shivanigupta.com. So ShivanIGupta. And that'll have all the rest of the information on all the aspects of the book that I want to teach to everyone. And the book is really a beautiful way to take all of Ayurveda and simplify it so we can use it in our lives in really tangible ways. That's why I try to simplify the language, all those concepts, but still give that hardiness of how to bring this wisdom into our daily lives.
Well, that's so good to hear because I think that's what many people want. How can I take this and put it into my life. So different ways that you can make this actionable. And so you've been a wonderful advocate and teaching people about this. And we've known each other for many years. And I always appreciate you, your wisdom, and your support of health coaches. So thank you for all that you do to support the profession, health coaching.
Absolutely. I think health coaches are the most necessary piece of our whole entire health structure. And we've talked about this. Without the health coaches, you're not going to have compliance. You're not going to have accountability support, the coach alongside you who helps you implement. And I think especially as we have this growth in functional medicine, we need that loving coach alongside us who's going to help us with implementation. I thought that this week for myself. I was like, you need someone at this point because this is a lot to implement, so much change into our lives. And so I think there's so much need for health coaching, and I love that you're a big part of creating that movement.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk with you as always.
You as well. Thanks so much.